I did my master's in robotic systems engineering from RWTH Aachen University in Germany. Now, on this channel, while I do advocate taking the self taught route to becoming a robotic software engineer, I do understand and acknowledge the fact that having done my master's in robotics from a premier university, it did open a lot of doors. It did give me a lot of exposure to the industry, to a lot of companies, which I probably would not have gotten otherwise. Now, of course, there are limitations to just following the master's program blindly and just studying all of the subjects and then getting the perfect grade and then expecting to land a job, because most universities still focus more on the research aspects of these technical subjects, and the focus is more on theoretical foundations, which are absolutely important. And that implies that the students have to cultivate the technical programming skill set, learning the necessary tools, the frameworks that are used in the industry, building the right set of projects all by themselves. So this is something that is what you have to do by yourself. But at the same time, the industries do look at your CV, and on your CV you would have the name of the university, and you would have your master's degree mentioned there if you choose to do that. So this is something that is definitely of importance, and obviously exposure to the industry, and if you're moving to another country, this would also expose you to a lot of other different experiences which you would not have otherwise. So that being said, self-taught route is something that is absolutely valid, and this is why I so much on it emphasize on it so much on this channel. And obviously, for a lot of people, it is not even a possibility to go for a master's because of familial, societal constraints, or financial constraints, or location related constraints. So uh, if you cannot afford to go for a master's, self-taught route is the way to go. But if you are not really sure if I should go for a master's or not, but you can afford to, you can definitely give this thing a try. You should definitely consider it as a valid option. So in this video, I'll be sharing with you the statement of purpose that got me into RWTH Aachen University, and this is something that I specifically wanted to create a video about because I was coming from a non software engineering background, and my background was in mechanical engineering. And then during the application phase and even after the applications, I was highly uncertain of whether I would really get an admission into this, because I had a few robotics projects here and there. I did study a little bit of robotics, but mainly from a mechanical standpoint, the kinematics and dynamics standpoint, and I still got an admission into the master's program. And it is just a matter of really showing your genuine motivation in your statement of purpose and what your background is, and crafting a story that actually does make sense. So that is why we would be having a look at my statement of purpose. So first of all, RWTH Aachen University is really one of the best universities in the world. It's in the top 100 universities worldwide according to QS World University Rankings, and it is the second best German university. So after TU Munich, it is the second best university when it comes to technical universities. And the exposure that you get is definitely worth it. So let me go ahead and share with you the statement of purpose now. So if you look at the first sentence, this would essentially give the reader an idea of what the entire statement of purpose would revolve around. So I say, take to kinematics, it will repay you. It is more fecund than geometry. It adds a fourth dimension to space. So this is just showing an appreciation for kinematics, and I was quite interested in kinematics and dynamics. A lot of my projects revolved around that, and I was really exploring a lot of mechanism design, kinematics and dynamics, and so on. So this is something that my SOP also revolves around. So then in the first paragraph, I just start with what genuinely motivated me and how I really got started with kinematics and dynamics and mechanism design in general, and how this exposure led me to really look more into robotics, and how that connected would come in the subsequent paragraph. So I mentioned about my fascination with mechanisms and the complexity of kinematics and mechanism design, and then how I started studying how I was taught the subject kinematics and dynamics of machinery in my college, and then I started exploring simulation of and creation of kinematic mechanisms on this design software CATIA in my free time, and then I started exploring more of mechanism simulation, and then started taking part in some mechanical engineering related projects and competitions such as human powered vehicle challenge, and then also Baja SAE, which is an off-road vehicle design and development projects. And then I talk about my involvement there, which was gearbox and chain drive system. So the first paragraph really talks about how I got started with it, what my interests were, uh, kinematics and dynamics and mechanism. So this is the starting point. So if I have to give a heading or title to the first paragraph, it is just this starting point, and I've also compiled it in the form of a blog article on the website learnroboticsandai.com, and this is where you can see a little bit of my a few of my comments here, but I'll be talking about it in more detail in this video. So then I've start talking about my professional experiences. So I say that I got exposure to conceptualization and design of a motorcycle ambulance at DRDO, and I talk about the challenge of the project, and it involved designing mechanisms for adjustment and locking of seat, and this was something that I also enjoyed working a lot with, and my fondness towards the idea persuaded me to continue this project and make it my final year bachelor's project under a certain professor of my department, and with whom I completed the final design, prototype, and development. So then I say, hey, I got fascinated by these things, but I didn't stop there. I actually made it my final year project, and I explored it and explored mechanism, kinematics, and dynamics in a major project, and this further validated my admiration towards the exciting field of mechanism design. So now, so far, I have not even talked anything about robotics, because this is how it was. My exposure to robotics was very limited, and I would talk about robotics in the coming paragraphs as well. But so far, you see, I say, okay, I started with kinematics. I just learned this as a subject in my bachelor's. It was just one of the academic topics that we were taught, and then I said, okay, I like it. I want to do it in my free time. I started exploring mechanism design, simulating these wonderful mechanisms, and then I started doing a few personal projects, and then I got exposure to DRDO, where I was also where I dug a bit deeper into really designing a mechanism based system. So then I started touching a little bit of robotics and mechatronics here. So kinematics, mechanisms, and now a little bit of mechatronics. So as I studied subjects like control systems and robotics as part of my curriculum, I got exposure to mechatronics, and I started doing some projects such as programmable drawing robot and automatic coil winding machine, which I pursued as a means to further explore the field of mechatronics. And it allowed me to deeply acknowledge the potential at the convergence of mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and computer science, bringing forth. And then each of these projects offered its own set of challenges. Then I talk a little bit of these details, and then talk about my professional full-time work experience, where I was working as a mechanical design engineer, but I was also explored to a lot of these mechanisms. So mechanisms such as the window regulator, the wiper mechanism, trunk, hood lock. So all of these things were something I was associated with as part of my role as well. So each being actuated electromechanically and controlled by a central computer, I began to appreciate the field of mechatronics more deeply. Now, in this paragraph, I took a step away from just talking in detail about mechanisms and kinematics, because eventually I want to talk more about robotics and really showcase my motivation towards robotic software, robotics engineering in general, and why I'm really applying for this master's program in the first place. So from kinematics, I go to mechanisms, and then from mechanisms, I say, okay, I also got exposure to mechatronic. From mechanisms, each mechanism would have a mechanical component, an electronic component, and also a software system. So this exposed me to mechatronics, and from there I would start touching the robotic side of things. So here I talk about these mechanisms that I got exposure to, and it was also during this time that I was undertaking the Genba training, the on the job training at Honda, where I would see the spot welding operations and robots, from picking up the door to precisely positioning it on the welding jig, and application of spot welds at multiple locations. It was all automatic, and I couldn't help but appreciate the synergy of mechanics, electronics, and computers in action. Enchanted by watching robots at the assembly line, I decided to delve into the field of robotics by means of resources at my disposal, and I started taking up online courses. So from mechatronics, I start touching robotics. What was my first exposure to industrial robots or robotics in the companies? Now, you might probably not have this exposure, you would have a different storyline, and it is really important that you share your genuine motivation, because you cannot really fake your interest in robotics. And if you are not really sure of, if you just want to study robotics because it is the field to go, and there's a lot of hype these days about robotics, these humanoid robots, artificial intelligence in general, and if you're not genuinely motivated by it, then it is really also not that easy to write a motivation letter that would appeal. So so if you are not absolutely sure, I would actually encourage you to watch this video titled Top Reasons to Study Robotics. And here I just summarize some of the reasons that I would feel are genuine and are the right reasons to pursue any field in general. And there's another video like the title Top Reasons Not to Pursue Robotics. So make sure you are absolutely clear on why you want to pursue robotics, because this is something that would help you write a really good motivation letter as well, and it would make your future career journey also a lot smoother. Okay, coming back to my statement of purpose. So then I start talking about the synergy of mechanics, electronics, and computers in action. Then I talk about my first attempts to learning robotics by myself. So I took up this online course on robotics, and it broadened my vision on the scope of robotics as a field, and modeling legged robots and research aspects associated with mobile robots. And after touching these aspects of my prior experience, and the initial few paragraphs essentially talk in detail about my experience, because this is also what they actually want to see. They want to see and know what kind of work you have done and how that inspired you to study robotics more. And if you do not have enough prior experience, you should probably also spend some time taking up some online courses, or preferably building a few projects, because this is something that you can easily do in your um, free time. And there are more resources than ever nowadays to really compile and build up a few projects, and that should inspire you to pursue and even define what specific field within robotics you want to pursue. So then the next paragraph is talking about robotics in general. So this is perhaps the best time in the history of mankind to get involved in robotics, which is probably true. Never before have the circumstances been more conducive towards research and development in robotics, and never before have there been more opportunities in the field. So these are just facts that we know about. And then I talk a little bit about uh, the major advancements in robotics, so as to really show them and that I'm really excited about this, and I am I keep touch with the recent advancements in robotics and what are the state of the art approaches and what impact robotics is having on the economy and on the world. So I talk about Tesla's autonomous vehicles, IBM's Watson, surgeries, adoption of robots in other domains, humanoid robot, Sophia. It is clear that it is the era of robotics and AI. It is fortunate to be born during this age and wish to contribute. So now this is maybe a bit too much. The last sentence could even be eliminated, but I guess it is also absolutely fine to mention. So it depends on how much space you want to take. So for me, I did not want to restrict myself to a single page, primarily because I had a lot of projects and experience to share. A one page motivation letter would also be enough if you have limited experience, as long as you convey that you are convey your motivations to pursuing a master's program. So coming to the next paragraph, having developed a strong fundamental understanding about the field of robotics by means of the courses and the projects that I've pursued, coupled with my industrial experiences, robotic systems um, offered by your esteemed university would be very relevant to me, and this particular course is very intriguing because of its interdisciplinary nature. And I talk about a little bit about the course, about the faculty of IGMR, which is a leading motivator in solving research and industrial problems in the diverse fields of mechanism theory, machine dynamics, and robotics, which means I would be learning from the best minds in the field. If given an opportunity, I would love to work for IGMR and contribute to its research in the future. Now, this is one of the most important paragraphs here. After I have talked about my experiences and how I actually got interested in robotics, how all of my previous experiences bring me towards uh, the step where I'm applying for this robotics program. And in this paragraph, where I talk about the institute that is hosting this particular program, Robotic Systems Engineering, the kind of projects and research topics they work on, I just connect everything together, and the motivation is crystal clear on as to why I'm really applying for this program. So I say that I'm interested in the research side of IGMR, and I like the topics that IGMR Institute, the host institute for robotic systems engineering, is working on, and they also work on mechanism theory, machine dynamics, and robotics. So this really is it really connects with the beginning, the starting point of my journey, where I said, okay, I'm interested in kinematics and I would be exploring mechanism theory. I did a lot of projects here and there. Then I started exploring robotics, and I started learning a lot of robotics. I got exposure to robotics in the industry, and here everything connects together. Everything comes in one place, where I say that I'm applying for this position because you also work on mechanisms. I'm interested in mechanisms. I've already demonstrated that. I'm interested in robotics. I'm interested in kinematics and dynamics. So the final few paragraphs just talk about the university in general and about the country that I'm applying uh, for. So RWTH Aachen has a global reputation in mechanical engineering education and follows a high standard in teaching. It is at the forefront of cutting edge research. Now, these are standard things about the university that you can look up and do your research on. And I just mentioned that I have had exposure with working with international colleagues at my company, and I value the importance of working in harmony with people from diverse cultural backgrounds and how it inevitably widens one's perspective. And RWTH Aachen is really the uh, best uh, place to pursue robotics for me because of the reasons, because of its connection with IGMR, because of my prior interest and background, and how all of these things connect. And I also took my research to a step further by talking about the competitions that the institute and the faculty the PhD students participate in on a regular basis. So the RoboCup Logistics League is what a lot of RWTH Aachen University colleagues participate in. And then I also mentioned that why I'm really interested in, and I believe that RWTH Aachen would really allow me to channel my passion for creating towards something useful for the benefit of society by means of robotics. Okay, so far we have talked about kinematics and dynamics, mechanisms, my journey towards robotics, and then also about the institute, the RWTH Aachen, the research topics they're involved in, the competitions that the employees participate in, and a lot of these things. So it is very well connected. Now, if you're applying for a master's program in a foreign country or in another country, essentially it does make sense to talk a little bit about the country and why you're really applying for that, because you might be applying uh, to USA, you might be applying to Canada or Germany or Italy, but why are you applying for that specific country? Now, of course, you probably would be applying to a lot of different countries, but it does make sense that if you're applying to Germany, for example, you probably are also interested in the culture, and you probably have a little bit exposure to understanding the background and why it makes sense in terms of your career path and also in general. So it does make sense to talk a little bit, maybe a couple of sentences. Now I chose to mention a paragraph because my SOP is already long enough to cover 2 pages, but if you have just 1 page, then you can mention a statement or two. My aspiration to study in Germany emanates from the fact that Germany is considered a leader amongst European countries in developing robotic systems, and is the primary location for pursuing research and development in robotics and automation. Now that is true. There are more job opportunities than in Germany, within Europe, and a lot of people from Italy, Spain, and other European countries prefer to come to Germany because of better pay and better opportunities. And I talk about the education system in Germany, which is built upon the principle of the unity of learning and research, and hence gives me plenty of opportunities to pursue a research career. And a little bit about the culture of Germany, and I mentioned personal association with Germany. A few of my relatives have stayed in Germany for a brief duration of time, and they appreciate the living atmosphere there. I'm looking forward to an exciting time in Germany. Thank you for spending time on my essay. Okay, so now if you read this, you see that all aspects of my professional uh, journey have been connected to the course that I'm applying for, and it is a really coherent storyline that I've built. And I've also talked about Germany in general, the university in general, and why I'm really inclined towards this course and taking this path. What do I want to do in the future? I've talked about my research interests, and I would consider the possibility of doing a research at one of your institutes and things like that. So, uh, one more thing that I'd like to mention is that if you're writing your motivation letter, the steps that you should follow are essentially step one should be that you spend some time really just free journaling and writing down all of your thoughts that come into your mind. And it would be a bit chaotic in nature, but essentially, this would ensure that you do not miss any important steps, and do that multiple times. Just a free journal, make modifications to this journal on why you want to pursue this master's program, and then start refining and making a structure similar to mine, where you follow a storyline that the reader would appreciate and would make sense. So once you are absolutely clear on why you want to study robotics, once you have journaled and gained enough clarity on your reasons, and you see how your storyline would look like, then define the structure. Uh, just create a brief outline of the paragraph. So for instance, the first paragraph is your starting point or your first exposure, and then the second paragraph would be the industrial projects that you got exposure to. The third would be maybe about uh, the program in general, and then you can start fitting the free journal, the free scripting that you created, the free script that you created in this structure, and then you would be able to come up with a really good statement of purpose and gain enough and really have a good SOP, statement of purpose, at the end. Now, the final words that I'd like to mention is that, of course, if you cannot afford to go for a master's, it is absolutely possible to become a self-taught robotic software engineer. And as I mentioned, even if you go for a master's, you do have to so-called follow the self-taught route, because you have to cultivate the technical skills by yourself. Um, no university can really spoon feed you or teach everything from scratch. You have to spend the time really learning to be self-disciplined, to cultivate the technical skills by yourself.